Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Entertainment Strikes Back. Today we're going to do something new with a movie review, and it's going to be over Wonder Woman 1984. And this review is in no way trying to take away anyone's experience for this movie, so if you loved it, that's great. If you didn't, that's fine. I just, again, want to give my 2 cents on it. This is a friendly reminder, though, that there are going to be spoilers in here, so if you haven't seen the movie, go ahead and check it out, then swing back around here and watch my video. But I do want to start with the stuff that I actually loved about the movie, and number one being the beginning scene in Themyscira. I love that we went back to Themyscira. It was cool to see. Themyscira is always nice to see. I wish that we spent more time in Themyscira. I wish it was more involved in the story and the plot, but it's not. It's only short-lived in the beginning, and that's it. There was no flashback scenes later on in the movie. It was just the beginning, and that was it. But with Hans Zimmer's music in the background and little Diana taking on fully grown Amazonian warriors was pretty cool to see. The second thing I really enjoyed in this movie was Pedro Pascal. He absolutely kills it in this movie. His acting really made me involved in his development as the capitalist-like villain. There are some Trumpian parallels with this character, though. Like, he was called a con man. He's a TV personality. He's got weird blonde wavy hair, and his power is literally her super villain name should be called the Dealmaker, because the whole story revolves around this object called the Dreamstone, which grants anyone wish to anyone, but it comes with a price. But he pretty much takes the stone and says, I wish I was you, the Dreamstone, and he becomes the Dreamstone. So he goes and he makes all these deals with people, and they get what they want, but he mainly gets everything. So it was a nice little twist on a villain's kind of superpower, and it wasn't so like super strength and, you know, you're in a fist fight. It was more of like a Lex Luthor type of deal where you're smarter, more clever than your super strong counterpart. Though there were some parts that were not explained or fleshed out for his character, and I'll talk about that more later. Okay, so Kristen Wiig as Barbara Navarro, whatever her name is, Cheetah. For the most part of the movie, I expected what I got, which was she was a goofball. It was lame. I didn't really see her as this villain type of character. It's Kristen Wiig, and but there was one scene in the movie, it's probably my favorite scene in the movie, where she practically kicks this rapist's ass. This guy had an altercation with her earlier in the movie, and now she has super strength, and she just kicks his ass for like a minute and a half, and it's great. And it was probably the most empowering moment in the movie, which is both kind of good and bad, because the most empowering moment in Wonder Woman 1 was her crossing no man's land. But still, the scene that we got with Barbara kicking that dude's ass was awesome and very satisfying to me. Another scene that I actually liked was Steve's goodbye. Though I didn't like how Steve came back in this movie. More on that later. But I did have emotional reaction when he left us yet again. And Gal Gadot stepping up her acting game in this movie, in this scene particularly, when she has to let him go to save the world. So Diana wished for Steve to come back, but at a cost, so she had to give something up in return, and she had to give up her powers for him to come back. The way she has to give up Steve so she can get her powers back and save the world is a very emotional moment, because you can tell that she'd rather die than give him up. But obviously that's not the case. She does give him up. She renounces her wish and gets her powers back. And this scene kind of then transitions into the third act, and where we get to see Wonder Woman get so mad, she's yelling and she's ready to kick some ass, and she gets a power upgrade, which brings me to the next thing I loved about this movie, which is Diana can now fly. Thank God Diana can now fly. But does she use it in any fighting sequences? No. Does she kind of use it to get around? Kind of. Most of these scenes that I love in this movie are kind of piled on with a lot of bad stuff, so I kind of have to shovel all the out of the way to see a pretty good, decent scene, which is unfortunate. I can totally see how this movie really wasn't meant for a fan like me who's into more of like the grittier DC movies like Man of Steel and BVS, or even Wonder Woman 1 for that matter. But This would be a great movie for, fans of the Wonder Woman TV show, fans of the Richard Donner Superman movies, or even 80s movies in general. Uh, but in my personal view, I had a lot of problems with this movie. And one of them was definitely the cheese. The cheesiness of this movie is kind of through the roof. It's Marvel level, but it was to be expected through the TV spots and the trailers and the movie clips, and knowing Jeff Johns had a role to play in this movie, I knew that was just going to happen. The action sequences. The action sequences were very weird to me. They were pretty lame. They were short-lived. There wasn't much of it. It was very corny. The physics of it all didn't make sense. There was never a moment in this movie where I stood up out of my seat and was like, that was badass. There was no moment like that. The third act with Cheetah was very, very quick, and the whole armor, the golden armor that she had was useless. It was gone within a minute and a half of them fighting. And then after that minute and a half, the fight is over within 30 seconds or so. So it was very short-lived. It wasn't very epic. And I feel like the whole point of bringing Cheetah in was to have someone that Wonder Woman can punch in the face. But she never even punches her in the face. So I feel like they definitely missed the mark on the action for sure in this movie. Another problem I had with this movie is Steve coming back, but he's not really back. So when Diana wishes for Steve to come back, she gives up her powers, but he comes back, but his soul takes over some random dude's body, and it's not. There's no explanation for it. There's no purpose for it. It just happens, and I feel like that could have been a very easy fix to just say, no, he's back. He's just back in his human form. I don't know why he has to be in some other guy's body, because there was no payoff for it at the end. So I feel like it was very unnecessary, and I feel like they just pulled him back because they brought Steve back because to be the comedic relief, I guess, a man at a time, and that they had very good chemistry. Chris Pine and Gal Gadot did in the last movie, so they had a focus group, and they're like, oh, let's bring him back somehow. But we'll f*** up the story, and who cares? Let's just bring him back. So I thought that was a big problem. Now, my next problem with this movie is Cheetah itself. The whole character with, Barbara, Kristen Wiig as Barbara and Cheetah. I just feel like it was a poor casting decision, because you're supposed to get this feeling that she's unlovable, she's not attractive, and no one wants to hang out with her, and she has no confidence. I didn't see that. I saw Kristen Wiig, who is a gorgeous woman, and I saw that she was goofy and funny, like Kristen Wiig is, which turns people on, not off. And she was had a very lovable personality, but you weren't supposed to have that either, because she's supposed to have this weird disconnect with humans because she wants to be better, she wants to be an apex predator, she wants to be different than everybody else. I didn't feel that that motivation to be more or better than anyone else. It just felt really awkward and forced for her to become this villain-like character. And the way she turns into the Cheetah is by far the most upsetting thing about her in this movie. She just literally says, I want to be an apex predator, and then turns into Cheetah. That's it. There's no transformation scene. There's none of that. It's just she's Cheetah the next time you see her, and then within 5 minutes she reverts back into Barbara. So it was very messy, and it was very lazy, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And it's very upsetting because there's so much lore that they could have used that would have made way more sense. So I just felt like that was a huge letdown. It was a very lazy way to bring that character into the world of DC, and it just felt very, very lazy to me. The whole thing about this movie that drives me really crazy are the unanswered questions. And like, for example, none of the villains of the movie get held accountable for their actions. None of them are arrested. There's no prison scene. There's nothing. It's just left open-ended. And Steve knowing how to fly a modern jet when he's only accustomed to flying World War One planes. He's literally like, I don't know if I can fly this thing. Here we go. Like, none of it made any sense. Or how in that very same scene, Diana pulled convenient magic right out of her butt to turn the jet invisible, just to have the invisible jet. Or how at the end, when we saw Cheetah revert back into Barbara without even seeing her renounce her wish. Or at the very end, when he's broadcasting and everyone's wishing for this and wishing for that, no one who saw the broadcast, no one wished for a selfish wish, no one wished for world peace, no one wished for no nukes, no one wished for any of that. It comes to a point in the movie where you just have to go, well, why is this happening? 'Cause, well, why is she doing this? 'Cause, well, what's really happening here? 'Cause, for example, Maxwell Lord's knowledge of the stone, never explained, never explored upon. They just go to his office and just see that he's got a bunch of drawings of it on his desk. That's it. There's no explanation of how he knows it'll work, where he can find it, and how he found out about it in the first place. The stone itself was a huge problem for me because they referenced the Duke of Deception, which is a known lieutenant of the God of War who had a hand to play in World War II. He influenced the Japanese to strike at Pearl Harbor. He influenced Hitler to invade Russia. And you just took the Dreamstone from this character and put it in the 80s just to have like an 80s nostalgic, goofy kind of fun movie, when it sounds like source material you're using sounds like it should belong in World War II, and the villain should be the Duke of Deception, or the Count of Conquest, or the Earl of Greed, all known lieutenants of, Ares, her last villain in her last movie. So I just felt like the 80s, you skipped over so much stuff, and you went straight to where nothing was going on, so you had to do a lot of shuffling and moving around to where it actually seemed threatening and interesting and all this other stuff, where you could have just stuck to the basics and just done it in World War II. I don't understand why you guys skipped decades of all this juicy material of women's rights and civil rights and, the Nazis, everything, Vietnam. You skipped over all of it just so you can make an 80s nostalgic movie. I feel like you should have just stuck with the Duke of Deception and World War II. No Cheetah. Save Cheetah for later. And you can have Cheetah in the 80s later on. I don't know why that couldn't have been a thing. The thing about with Wonder Woman's lore is there's so much stuff that you can jump on. You can go on the underworld. You can go back to Olympus. You can see if there's any gods left. You can see if Hades is still alive. There's so many monsters you can fight. There's so much stuff that Diana can do with her being, linked to Greek mythology. There's so much story there that you kind of just did the Thor Ragnarok thing, where it was built on Norse Armageddon, and you made it into an 80s retro comedy. And I felt like that's kind of what's happening right here, which is unfortunate because this whole DCEU started on the shoulders of grittier movies like Man of Steel and BVS, and even Wonder Woman for that matter. I do know that the next DC movie is going to be Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is going to be rumored to be rated R, which is fine with me. And with Jeff Johns out of the picture, this may be the last campy, goofy, Marvel-like DC movie we will see. Hopefully, for me at least. But I can't help to wonder what's going to happen to the DCEU now after Wonder Woman 84, and the next movie going to be something completely different with a different feel, different style entirely. What's going to happen to the DCU after this? Are we going to go back to the grittier, darker style, or are we going to still lean into more of the lightheartedness, or a little bit of both? I don't know, but we shall see with future DC movies. Alright guys, thanks for watching my movie review of Wonder Woman 1984. If you like my reaction, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. What do you guys think about this movie? And I will see you guys in the next one.